feel like I'm making a good sell for Nolan. But let's see what Katie Woo says right now. Covers the St. Louis Cardinals for The Athletic and new host of Cardinal Territory, joining the FT fam. Katie, good to see you. And it's a big day. This is good timing, actually, for Cardinal Territory to get announced, right? What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, I can't find my Redbird hat that AJ had on, but if I did, we totally could have matched. But every time I come on the show, AJ doesn't want to be on with me. So I'm not taking it personally, but I am taking notes.
Also, you can, the good news about being on when he is not here is you can say whatever you want about him and you don't have to deal with any of it besides, maybe a text message. So yeah, let her rip, go do what you got to do. But there's the QR code for everyone to subscribe to Cardinal Territory. And I know a lot of fans that get the TV channel in St. Louis can also now have a little pod on the go. But Katie, help us figure out what the deal is here with Nolan. I even felt like I kind of saw conflicting reports on if he ever put the Astros on his unofficial list for John Mozeliak. Do you know more about that?
So it's shocker. It's a complicated situation. The Cardinals have been very, very vocal about their intents to trade Arenado. He never demanded a trade, but he was agreeable to the concept, right? We know all of this. He did present the Cardinals with a short list of teams that he would consider. This was at the beginning of the offseason, though, and while the Astros were on it, you think about where the Astros are right now. They traded away Kyle Tucker. If you're pursuing Nolan Arenado, you are assumingly probably no longer in the market for Alex Bregman. That's a different team. The Houston Astros are a completely different team without Tucker and Bregman. So that could have given Nolan some pause. What I do know about the situation is that he did decline to waive his no trade clause on Tuesday. For now, this is not going to stop the two sides from continuing conversations, though it is unclear just how heavily the Astros will pivot away from Arenado or if they will at all. All Nolan said was, "I'm not going to Houston right now." It's not no. It's just no for the time being. And the reason for that is that he still wants to see how his market is going to take hold. He says it's early, or people have said it's early. December 19th probably isn't that early in the grand scheme of the offseason calendar, but his market is still relatively undefined, and it will probably stay that way until Bregman signs. So to me, it was not necessarily about the team not being a good fit. It was more of the timing not being a good fit.
And I think that's what people need to understand too. Like, listen, there's this communication. You don't see this too often when it comes to brass and players, the communication they're having. I think the words are key here right now. I think, again, this is helpful for the player. He has an opportunity to say what the heck he wants to do. And I think this is only good for players and for people in baseball. Listen, I'll go to Houston, but I'm gonna set that aside a little bit. I want to see what Boston has to offer. I want to see what the Mets have to offer and a couple other teams. And I think what you're saying is a huge, huge thing for them. They are both in communications, and I think people need to understand that this doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't. And you can see both sides, right? It makes sense why the Cardinals are motivated to trade Nolan. President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak has to figure out the rest of his team. He's also facing some pressure from ownership to bring payroll down. And obviously, trading away $74 million would help bring payroll down. Now, from Nolan's perspective, he has every right to waive his no trade clause, to choose not to. He's earned that right. That's the whole point of giving players a no trade clause. So if he's not feeling right about the situation for whatever reason, he has every right to say, "Hey, I'm not feeling this. Let's look for something different." Or, "Hey, maybe not right now. I'm still interested, but I like to see other things." I can see why it's frustrating for both sides, and I can see why the Cardinals would maybe be a little frustrated here. This is an ideal situation for them, especially because, we talked about this, their intents to bring payroll down. In that agreed upon deal, they were only paying roughly $5 million each year for the remaining 3 years on Arenado's contract. That's going to make John Mozeliak's bosses really happy. But the Cardinals, they're not the only party that has a say in this. Nolan absolutely has a right to say yes or no. And if he's not sure about the timing, if he's not sure about the fit, he doesn't have to say yes.
Who's handling this the best? Or is everybody, this is all cordial and everything's all happy-go-lucky here? Or is there a little bit of angst on either side?
I think it's important to note that Nolan has not said anything publicly, but I will say that it was a little different just covering the Cardinals for so long, having Mo go out and say at the winter meetings what his intentions were. That's not how he usually operates. And for then Joel Wolfe, Nolan's agent, to follow up and basically back up those what Mo said. Then I was like, oh, this is a little strange because these are two parties that don't really necessarily like to negotiate in public. And here they are. So it was always going to be a complicated matter, right? The contract, where the Cardinals are, Nolan having a complete full no trade clause. It was always going to be hard to find a fit. I still think that the Cardinals can. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth. And the more this comes out and the messier it gets, the more interesting it is from a public perception, but it really can't make either party any happier that this is going down the way that it is.
Do you think that he has teams in mind besides the Dodgers that he would instantly say yes to? I know he released that list. It's hard for me to fathom, hey, I don't want the Astros, but for example, I'm okay with the Angels, if he's also saying that he wants to join a contender right away. I know the Dodgers are the dream for a while. And Katie, it seems like that's very unrealistic. I know your colleague Fabian Ardea kind of confirmed that too a few weeks ago. So if that's not the dream scenario and it's not happening for him, do we think if he suddenly gets traded to Boston tomorrow, he'll say yes right away?
See, that's a good question. I think it's going to depend on the market. The big reason he had some pause with Houston was because his market's not defined. And I think it doesn't matter which team that was on his list came out. Even if it was, take your pick, I think he still might have some sort of pause. The Astros, of course, are a little different because they just traded Kyle Tucker. So it's a different team. That situation has changed. I don't blame Nolan for wanting to see what else is out there because when you think about it, he's going to be 34 years old next year. This is probably, I love that we talk about players who are in their mid 30s as being the oldest people alive. It's one of my favorite things about baseball. But when you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's probably the last time he's going to have a say over his future and where he wants to play. You talked about this before bringing me on. He's played in just 8 playoff games over his entire 12-year career. And since Arenado has come up, he has been adamant about his desires to play in the postseason. So again, I don't fault the guy for trying to make sure that he has the best possible destination for next year. I'm not ruling out him coming back to St. Louis, though I can't imagine that would be good for either side. It's just a complicated matter, guys, and I don't think we're really close to anything being resolved at this point.
Okay, say last question for me for Arenado. Say he gets picked up. What's the backup plan at third base? Do they have a young guy coming up, or they got a veteran guy waiting in the corners? Like who's next in line once this does happen?
So the Cardinals are all in on their youth movement. They're very much let the kids play. They'll have Nolan Gorman at third. He came up as a top prospect as a third baseman, moved to second base. They have Brendan Donovan. He can play everywhere, but he profiles really well as a third baseman. Jordan Walker, though he, like Gorman, came up as a third baseman, they're going to keep him in the outfield for now. But they have options. Thomas Ajayce is another young up-and-comer in AAA. He saw a little bit of big league action at the end of the year. The big point for the Cardinals in 2025 is playing as many of their young players as possible because they want to know who they have internally. They want to know what their next core looks like, right? You think about when the Cardinals were really good about 10, 12 years ago, they had that Memphis Mafia with Daniel Descalso, John Jay, Alan Craig, go on, you name it. That's what they're trying to build again. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is by playing the young kids every day. So they won't go out and have a veteran stopgap. They won't go sign someone off of free agency. They will promote internally and see what they have if they do actually trade Nolan Arenado.
Katie, they had Yadier Molina. Yadier Molina helped the Memphis Mafia assimilate into the big leagues. He didn't allow the coaches to get in the way. Tony La Russa, get out of the way. Mike Matheny, get out of the way. He'll take care of it. The org has to pick stuff up. So I'm going to go with another org mistake. And is it a mistake or is it kind of how the whole thing worked out? Wilson Contreras is now going to go play first base. Is that because they tried to shop him and realized that nobody wants him as a catcher? Or is that because, he's going to help all these young guys develop in the big leagues and be that leader at first base?
Yeah, probably neither. I know they didn't really want to trade Contreras, and he has a full no trade clause anyway. So even if they did, you're seeing how that works out for them. They liked him at first base because they like his bat. And when they signed Contreras, for whatever reason, they were a little bit surprised that his catching was behind Yadier Molina. And that's no knock on Contreras. That's praise to Yadi. But they also watched Contreras play in the division, 18 times a year for 7+ years. So the fact that they were surprised is their own fault. But Contreras' bat has always played, especially when healthy. So moving him to first base will, assumingly, keep him healthy, fingers crossed. And they have those two young catchers in Pedro Pajes and Ivan Herrera, who they want to see. This goes back to our earlier point in playing the kids. They want to see what they can do every day. So moving Contreras to first, that was a no-brainer for the organization once they informed Paul Goldschmidt at the end of the season they wouldn't be bringing him back. To me, it's more of the organization is trying to find the best combination of players that they have internally in 25 so that when Chaim Bloom takes over for Mo in 2026, they have that core established and they can augment the club after that. The only way they're going to figure out what they have is by playing the pieces that they have every day. So that kind of played into Contreras' move to first base.
Katie, I'm trying to figure out if this team can kind of mess around, not do much, and still be a playoff contender because they aren't in one of the stronger divisions, at least going into this year. In baseball, I mean, it doesn't look like the Pirates are working on their big league roster much. Reds had kind of a weird year. Obviously, the Cubs just got better with the Kyle Tucker addition, and the Brewers won the division easily, but they've lost some big guys. Anyway, so do you think if they can't figure out a deal for Nolan Arenado, they can't figure out a way to make him happy and get what they want via trade, that they would have to go down to other players on the roster that could also affect what happens next season? Like I think it was in your article talking about players like Miles Michaelis and even Sonny Gray. For me, I'm like, Katie, if Sonny Gray gets traded, now you're really in trouble as a rotation heading into next year. His value is much higher than Nolan's is, frankly, in my mind right now, given that they have a replacement for Nolan.
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. Because if the Cardinals end up not trading Arenado, they still, per ownership, have to cut payroll. So they'll pivot to members of the starting rotation. The good news for Sonny Gray is he has a full no trade clause. The Cardinals just give those away, apparently, and has told the Cardinals in the beginning of the offseason that he would prefer to stay. Miles Michaelis, also full no trade clause. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, those are the two starting pitchers that are making the most money. Miles is making nearly $18 million, Sonny over $20 million next year, $25 million, I should say. The two pitchers that they would pivot to are Steven Matz and Eric Fetty. And the Cardinals really don't want to move Eric Fetty, at least not in the beginning of the season. He's only due $7.5 million. Matz, they've been shopping around. They've been seeing interest. He's due $12 million. Both Eric Fetty and Steven Matz are on expiring deals. So we've seen the price of starting pitching. We've seen what trade packages could land. It's a good way to maybe offload salary if you have to, though it's certainly not the way the Cardinals want to do it. That is their plan B, and they're really hoping that they don't have to use it.
What a non-Cardinals offseason we have so far. But with this offseason, the new GM is going to be Chaim Bloom. Is the reason, or have you heard the reason that he is not the GM this year? Is it because of, was that a Chaim? Like, did he not want to come in and do the same thing he did in Boston? First thing he had to do was trade Mookie Betts. So this offseason would have been him just axing everybody and he would look like the bad guy? Or was this something that Mo said, no, I got to do this on my way out?
The Cardinals or Chaim Bloom have never outright said that, but that is a great point. I can't imagine that would be an amazing start to anyone's tenure. And Chaim Bloom has already had that happen in Boston. I think this is an organization decision. The Cardinals, they try to be as methodical. They don't like surprises. They don't like any kind of disruption to their routine. Very Cardinal way. So Mo has one more year left on his contract. And what he's done for the organization, what he's done for ownership, I think sometimes gets downplayed because of the lack of success for the Cardinals over the last 2 years. Baseball is a very what have you done for me right now business, and everyone understands that. But the Cardinals would like to see Mo finish his tenure because while they're dealing with this mess on their major league roster, they're also completely overhauling their player development system. We've talked about this before, and that's what Chaim Bloom is going to start with because his background in player development is top notch. He comes up through the Rays, his time with the Red Sox. You see what he's done with that farm system is now suddenly in the big leagues, and you're starting to see that come to fruition. So Chaim Bloom is the perfect person to jumpstart an desperately needed overhaul of the Cardinals' very outdated player development system. So by giving him 1 year to focus on that, the hope is by 2026, Mo has done what he has to do for the roster to get it in a good place. Chaim has spent a year getting to know the minor leagues, the farm system, the prospects, and come the start of next season, or next season, I should say, it'll be more of a coming together instead of everyone scrambling to do different jobs at one time. So I see the big picture idea It's not very orthodox, but I understand why the Cardinals went the way that they did in this regard.
I think Scott might be trying to talk, but he's muted.
Oh, we lost you, Scotty.
He's muted. This is what happens. He's the beauty of our show, and sometimes people don't want to hear him, so they just get to see him, and it really raises our ratings. But
Well, I
first,
just thought he didn't
while,
like
while
my
we have a
point.
chance, I want to say awesome job on your first show.
Thank
Katie
you.
with the Cardinals Territory. You guys killed it. You and Trevor.
Yes, we started out, we were both like, hey, you know what? We don't really know what's going on. So in our test episode, let's just wing it. And then after we were like, once we figure this out, maybe. So shout out to Trevor. He is very, very new to the media side, but you can't tell. He's a natural. And if you guys are not familiar, we just launched Cardinal Territory earlier in the week. We will have a new episode out later today. I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm just happy to be a part of the Foul Territory fam.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Am I back, by the way, or no?
Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
back.
All right. Hey, and there's Katie and Trevor. So go check out the show. You can listen wherever you listen to your pods. And you can also check it out on YouTube. Off to a super strong start. The Cardinals fan base is large. They've been waiting for this. So, Katie, thank you. Appreciate the time. Good to see you.
You got it, guys. We will talk soon. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Talk soon. Katie Woo, part of Cardinal Territory and, of course, for The Athletic.